The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey folks, this is Joseph Flahiff, and we're about ready to get started here in just a couple of minutes. We just wanted to pop online and say hi. Good to see folks here today. Recognize a few names. Rachel and Marianne. Good to see you there. Can you all hear me? If you can hear me, can you press the little raised my hand button there so that I know that, okay, good. Thank you, Yevor. Did I mutilate your name there? I'm sorry if I did. So, and Rose, good to see you. Where are people from here today? I know a couple of you are from Washington State because I recognize your names. But I'm just curious, where from the countries and worlds around are you from? You can type that into the little chat line there if you want to. Love to hear where people are from around the world. So do people see where the chat box is? Oh wait, I see people entered the question marks. Here we go. That's where. Phoenix, hey! I'm going to be in Phoenix for the PMI Global Congress. I spoke at the Phoenix chapter once. Oh, okay. Rachel, good to see you there. You and Rose, both from retirement services here in Washington State, so you'll be fairly familiar with these folks, the Department of Licensing people. It's good. All right. Well, we've got a couple minutes. I don't want to start too early because we'll don't want people to join late and then miss out on parts of it. And yeah, we still got people joining. So we have folks from all over the country, and I know we have people from all over the world because I've seen several folks join from other countries here, which is exciting. I went online and tweeted about it just before the start, and we'll see if any additional people joined because of the tweeting, which is always interesting. For those of you in the United States, today is Wonderful Friday. You might think about instant messaging any of your peers in your organization to see if they wanted to join too, because there's room in the webinar at this point. That would be awesome. Love to see more people hearing about this. Getting online, because it's very exciting. The work that Washington State Department of Licensing did is a great case study for how you can really turn an organization around. They're still working, they're still growing, they're still learning, and it's been 3 years, but it's been a good deal with them. They've done some good work, and we've seen them grow quite a bit in their ability to deliver. I have a write-up on this. Those of you who are at the Washington State IPMA conference probably picked up a copy of the case study, but I can send you a copy of that if you'd like me to. Email me, let me know, and I will send you a copy. Still people joining us, so I don't want to get started just yet. Just saying hi to everybody, for those of you who have just joined. We're going to get started right at the top of the hour, which by my clock is about 1 minute away. If you wanted to type in the question box or the chat box where you're from, love to hear. Got people from Washington State and people from Arizona with us today. I know there's people from other places. This webinar will get you a PDU if you're a member of PMI and are needing your PDUs, so this will give you one PDU. There isn't a special code for it or anything. You'll just go in and enter it separately. But it is Class A because I am a registered education provider. About 30 seconds, we'll get started. I just want to get started right on the top of the hour so people don't miss out because they joined right at the top of the hour. I have to apologize for moving this out by a day. That just had things happen and had to move it out. I just had to make it move. So I appreciate you all adjusting and coming in on this day, Friday, for this webinar. All right, by my clock, it's time to get started. So we will do that. I'm going to put all your hands down so that you can raise your hands later. If you want to ask questions during the webinar, feel free to do that. I will try and answer them during the webinar. However, it's not always easy to watch the chat box, questions box, and present the webinar. So I will do my best. And if I don't get them all at the beginning, there is time at the end where we will review and go through some of the questions. Hopefully all your questions, get them answered. We can learn a little bit more about agility. So the Washington State Department of Licensing, I have been the coach for them for about 3 years. They've done some great work. They're quite an amazing group of people. I loved working with them. It's a good group. We started out by, I provided them a training class, and it was a public training class, and a bunch of people came to it from the Department of Licensing. From that group, they decided, hey, let's pilot Scrum, which is one form of becoming Agile. It's a framework that enables agility, but we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into this. And so they decided to pilot it with this License Express project. Now, License Express is a website where Washington State, I'm going to say employees, it's not the word, residents, Washington State residents can go and renew their driver's licenses or their boat licenses or car licenses or motorcycle licenses. So it's both drivers and vehicles as well as like boats and things. So vehicles doesn't mean just cars, which is a really very exciting and interesting thing because it has to pull together a lot of different systems into one interface. And it's something that the Department of Licensing had been wanting to do for a long time. So this is a little bit about me. Y'all can see the slides, right? So we're going through slides appropriately. If you can't, please tell me you can't. I'm just going to go on the assumption that you can. This is me. I am Joseph Flahiff. I didn't update this slide yet, though, because I am not the, oh, no, that's right. I am the engagement lead. I thought it was still saying the ACP. I am the engagement lead for the PMI Agile Community of Practice. We have about 32,000 members in the Agile Community of Practice. So if you are a member of PMI, you should definitely go check it out. It doesn't cost anything. You just join the community. You can learn a lot of things there. There are great webinars. We have a whole bunch of webinars that are recorded that you can go, A, get PDUs for, but also, B, learn a heck of a lot. Maybe that's B. You can learn a heck of a lot about Agile through the free webinars and resources that we have there. Great discussion forums out there and good wikis and experience reports. So get involved in the Agile Community of Practice if you aren't yet. I've been with PMI for a long time. I got my PMP back in 2001. That was a long time ago, so you can see that there. I'm also obviously a certified Scrum Master, which means I took a 2-day class. The more important one is the blue one up there on the upper right-hand corner. That is a CSP. That means I'm a certified Scrum professional, which is basically I've been doing it. I had been doing it for 2 years at that point or more. In order to get the CSP, you have to have 2 years or more of being an Agile practitioner, Scrum practitioner. Now I've been practicing Scrum for a long time. I started back in 2006, very beginning of 2005, and have been practicing Agile and Scrum since then. I also was part of the beta group for the PMI Agile Certified Practitioner, and that's exciting certification through PMI on Agile practices. It is a generic, in other words, a more broad spectrum certification than a Scrum certification or the other certifications that are out there. It's a broad spectrum. So you have to be knowledgeable and experienced, and they make you document your experience in multiple approaches to agility. So not just one type of agility, one methodology for becoming agile, but you have to be facile in multiple approaches. So interesting stuff. If you want to know more about like a comparison of the ACP to Certified Scrum Master and Certified Scrum Professional, et cetera, there's a great resource on my website, probably the most popular page on my website, whitewaterprojects.com, and it is a comparison of those different certifications. Good little resource for you, as well as other free webinars, et cetera, and videos on my website. So that's it. Enough babbling about me. Let's get into the meat of this thing. License Express. There it is. Actually, this is my page on License Express, so I blocked out a few things there. It is a portal, basically, that you go into. You log in with your login information once you've created an account, and it provides you this screen. On this screen, it says, here's my driver's information. Here's Joseph Flahiff. This would have been my full driver's license and when my license expires, when I last renewed it, what my license status is. So yes, I'm valid. I have not had my license revoked. There it is. If there's any restrictions upon my license or anything like that, it goes here. I have these little icons on the right-hand side that talk about, what are the different things I can do. Well, I can change my address, or I can replace my driver's license ID, or I can request my own driving record. All these things you used to have to go into the local branch of the licensing, Department of Licensing, walk up to a counter, well, take a number, stand or sit and wait for a long time, and then get your form, probably, fill it out, wait again to submit it, and then maybe you could do these things, right? You could get a change of address form or things like that, or maybe you could like mail things in, like snail mail approach. But with this website that they created using the pilot that they did of Scrum, they were able to put these things in the hands of the people right away. So that's what I can do with my driver's license. Here I have my vehicles. Yes, I own a Hyundai Sonata and a Toyota minivan. For each of those things, I can do any of these activities. Oh, look, I'm going to check my license. Yes, okay. So I was wondering, actually just yesterday, when do my tabs expire? Well, these tabs expire in September, and these tabs expire in October. So good. You helped me out. Thank you. But I can renew them right here online if I want to. I can change my address. I can report the sale of this vehicle, or I can update this email. I could also register a boat if I had a boat. Put that on here. And any trailers that need licensing, anything that requires a driver or vehicle license can be done through this website. This is all really cool, but it didn't all start out as easy as this. It doesn't, it's not a quick and easy story. This was a very long road to get to the launch here. It was at least in 2008, though there were rumblings before that they wanted to do this. Technology was there. They knew it was possible. So they first started looking at, okay, how can we pull together these things, these different resources, get them into the hands of our people, and get them to be able to do these simple activities online. This shouldn't be really hard, but it is. 2008 they started. They took some first stabs at it. They were trying to take a traditional, I'll use the word waterfall, but not very frequently. I tend to use the word traditional or sequential, but if you're familiar with the word waterfall, that's what I'm talking about. It's a traditional approach that we've all used, that I used for over a decade with multiple projects, where you up front you charter the project, and then you gather your high-level requirements and then detailed requirements, and then you do a design with some architecture, drill down, and then you finally build something, you test it, then you launch it, right? That's what they were trying to do at this point in these first few boxes. The first 3 boxes here, multiple designs that they would do. They would do full system designs, send them out, and then they'd get all this feedback that was, oh, I don't like this, we don't like that, we don't like this. And this went around and around and around for 2 years, right? You can see on the bottom here in the black that in 2010, that was after 2008, they tried to get it going. 2010, they shelved it. Forget it. We're not even going to try anymore, right? So they stopped. They put it on the shelf because of the lack of resources. So during this time, when they were doing these multiple revisions, it wasn't like they had a whole bunch of people. They had a whole bunch of other projects going on, like you probably do, right? They had multiple projects, and so they only had a slice of a couple of people to put on this. And as you're probably well experienced with, when you do that, if my slice of time and your slice of time don't match up perfectly, then it's not like we really have, I have 10% of my time I'm putting in on the project. You have 10% of your time you're putting in on the project. If our 10% don't match up, we don't have 10%. We have some significantly smaller percent of collaboration time when we can actually work together, which is the more productive time that we're going to have. And so because of that, they shelved it in 2010. Sat for 2 years, so from 2010 until the end of 2011, with an urgent need to get it done by the end of 2012. Isn't this not how it always works? It sits around for 4 years, right? It started in 2008. It's now 2011. Suddenly there's an urgent need. The urgent need was that the governor was leaving, and they wanted to leave a legacy, as many governors do, right? What was accomplished during my tenure. One of the things that we accomplished during the tenure of this governor was that this License Express product was created, and now the constituents are able to renew their licenses online. Very cool. We reduced, the amount of traffic that has to go to the licensing offices. We improved the efficiency with which people can get their licenses. Yay, yay, yay. Right? Great stuff. But it's an urgent need all of a sudden because she's leaving office. And so what they did was they reduced the scope that was originally, look over here in box number 3, it was originally scoped to be 3 years. See that right there I just highlighted? Originally scoped to be 3 years. And now they have scoped it back by 1 year. So they reduced it 1 year so that the new estimate was 2 years right here. 2 years to get this work done. Except for the fact that if you look here, the time from 2011 to 2012 is not 2 years. So there's a small problem here. They want to squeeze a 2-year project into 1 year. Well, about this same time, that was when that class I was telling you that I provided, the public class on Agile. It was a general Agile class, introduction, and the folks looked at that and said, we've heard about Scrum, we've taken your Agile class, in which I teach some Scrum as well, and they said, hey, let's try piloting Scrum on this project. Because if it works the way we're talking about, then at least by the time we get to a year, we'll have something. We may not have all of the 2 years worth of stuff, but because we will be delivering it iteratively and incrementally, which we'll talk about here in just a minute, what that all means, because we'll be delivering that iteratively and incrementally, we'll have something at least, and we can then get that out there, and people can start using it, and then we'll hopefully finish it after the governor's gone. That didn't happen. Actually, if you look down the next box where it says Scrum Pilot, they actually completed the entire scope in 9 months. No, there was no scope reduction beyond that 1 year that they cut to begin with. But because they were not taking the sequential, traditional approach, they were taking an iterative and incremental, lightweight, low documentation approach, they were able to get it done in 9 months instead of 2 years. They had the public launch in September of 2012, and it has been remarkably successful over the years since then. So let's take a look at some more detail here. Let's get rid of this. Oh, my pencil. There we go. Okay. So what are some of the erase all drawings. There it goes. Okay. So what were some of the other results? Well, we finished in 9 months a 2-year project. To begin with, when we were doing Scrum with the teams, it took them about 3 hours to do a 2-week sprint planning. That's a long time when they first started. It's a very long time. But when you're first getting started, don't be surprised, right? Don't be surprised if it takes you a while to get the ball rolling. You are not just planning at that point. You're learning and planning, okay? So recognize that things will get better. So in that sprint planning that they took, that's the planning that happens at the beginning of each of their little increments of delivery. It took them about 3 hours to plan out the next 2 weeks worth of work. By the end of the first 6 months or so, so it says here 6 months into the project, it was taking them about 15 minutes to do that same planning. The team was well-oiled. They knew each other well. They understood what they were doing. They had been doing this for 6 months, right? So they had experience under their belt. They knew each other and how the Scrum process works, and so they didn't have to spend as much time. That's a significant reduction in the planning time. But when you first start, again, let me say it again, when you first start, you will take more time than you want to. You'll be frustrated to begin with a little bit because it's taking so long. Recognize that it's just because you're beginning. It will improve. Now, the last one is very interesting. They had expected about 5,000 subscribers within the first year. They ended up getting close to 200,000 subscribers in their first year. Is this all because of an Agile approach? No, probably not. But you can look at it and say, because we were getting incremental feedback on it, we provided a higher level product than what they could have provided without taking an iterative and incremental approach. So nearly 200,000 new subscribers on the system by the end of their first year. Pretty remarkable results. But beyond just that, beyond that, I mean, that's remarkable enough by itself. But if you consider what is the actual cost and what was the quality of the product was amazing. And that's why it has resulted in nearly 200,000 people using the system. I have personally used the system multiple times. If you're in Washington State, you probably have too, because it's been up and running long enough that you probably have renewed your license through it. If not, you can, and you probably should. I have done tabs through there as well as doing a sale of a vehicle through there, which was great. You just go online and do all the forms for selling a vehicle, and you're all done. But if you look at the people time, the cost and time savings, that is huge, right? If it took us 9 months to do a 2-year project, that means that it's 15 months savings. And if you estimate the average developer salary at $125,000 per person for a developer salary, times 4 people probably to do the project, if you were to just do it straight out, take that full time to do it, that's a lot of money. That's over $500,000, probably $750,000 that it would have cost, and that was saved because of this approach. That is huge by itself, right? You can look at that and say, wow, not taking this kind of approach is potentially fiscal irresponsibility, because you are saving your constituents significant amounts of money. I mean, this isn't small. $1 million, $500,000 is a lot of money. And imagine the other projects now that you can get done because A, this one's out of the way, B, the money has been saved, and C, the people are freed up, right? But on top of all of that is the employee satisfaction. I think my favorite story, and if you were at IPMA, you heard this, my favorite story of this whole project was when they were demoing the product for the people who were going to support it in the end. The developers were doing a road show with it and took it out, and they did a demo. Here's how it works and all those things. And they got done with the demo, and the people were saying, "Okay, that's great, fine. You know, it works, looks great, very cool." And they looked at him and they said, "But what's going on?" And the developers were like, "What do you mean? What do you mean what's going on?" They said, "What's going on? I've never seen anyone from IT at this point in a project, just before go live, looking so happy. What is going on with you guys?" And they proceeded to explain to them how they had been using this Agile approach and that Scrum, and it was fun and it was interesting, and that they weren't worried and nervous anymore. Most often, people are nervous when they start a project because they are trying to figure out if it actually is going to work. They're worried that it's not going to work. And it had been working. It had been working every 2 weeks since very early on in the project. So there was great relaxation and joy in what they were doing. So I see a couple of raised hands. If you can, please, if you have questions, could you type them into the questions bar? And I will be happy to try and address those at the appropriate times. It's hard to address raised hands and try and lead the webinar, but I see that there are a couple of raised hands. So please, if you have questions, type them into the questions box, and we'll address them that way. So Agile it's not just being done, being used, these approaches are not just being used in Washington State, though there are a lot of us here. The federal government is using Agile approaches and becoming more nimble every month, maybe every day. We want them to become more nimble. The federal government is becoming more nimble. The General Accounting Office has put out, and I have at the end of this this presentation a series of links for you about to various documents that these organizations have put out. But the GAO has a document about Agile. Department of Defense is using it. NASA has been using it. Veterans Affairs, many more. There in Washington State, these are a few: Department of Licensing, Department of Information Services, Natural Resources, DOT in some places. All these are in some places. It's not everywhere across the board, but I'd like to add more names to this list. I'd love to see more and more organizations becoming nimble in the way that they work. This was from the Office of Management and Budget. Congressional interest has contributed to the identification of numerous examples of lengthy IT projects that incurred cost overruns and schedule delays while contributing little to the mission-related outcomes. I think you can probably all think, I can think of projects that I did in the past that would fit that definition, right? There are numerous examples where these lengthy projects incurred cost overruns and schedule delays those overruns and delays contributed little to the benefit of the outcomes. To reduce such risk of problems as a risk reduction effort, the Office of the Management and Budget recommends modular software delivery consistent with an approach known as Agile. Very cool. So the United States federal government has said in a couple of different places, the GAO has another document that is even more specific about Agile practices for federal government. But I wanted to bring this one out because it talks about the reasoning, right, in order to reduce risk. Oftentimes people will look at Agile and go, well, we can't do Agile on this project. Not that you can actually do an adjective, but we can't be Agile in this project because it's too risky. And OMB here is saying, no, it's because it is risky that you need to take an Agile approach to this. You need to take a modular, incremental approach to it. So our original approach, this is that sequential approach I was talking about, right? We do a charter or a contract with an external vendor. We develop our requirements. We do some design, detailed design, architecture. We build. Some developers or some construction happens. Then we test. There's a little tiny test there. Because the test always gets squeezed at the end. Hate that. And then we deploy. Boom. It's out there. And then things roll into prod support. This is how the original approach works on paper. This is how it works in reality. Oh, here's the 2 years timeline. This is how it works actually in reality. We do a charter or contract. We start gathering requirements. We document those in a big software requirement specification or other documentation. We start doing our design. The project managers and project staff are looking at it. They're checking it out, making sure everything's on track. It's looking good. We are 30% through this project. And then a sponsor shows up and goes, hey, I've got this great idea. Stop what you're doing with that. Let's do it a little bit differently. And it throws us all the way back to the beginning, or at least to the requirements section. How many of you have had that happen? Yes. All of you. If you're anything like me, you've had this experience where somebody changes their mind halfway through, and it's not a little change, right? It's not something you could do with a small change order or change request process. It is big. It's foundational, and we have changed now what we're doing and why we're doing it. When you take an approach that is more nimble, more agile, we like to take an iterative and incremental approach. So this is 2 pieces. Iterative, where you're starting out with something, and then you get some feedback on it, then you try again, and then you get some feedback on it, and then you try again, right? As well as incremental. So let's take a look at what that looks like. If your customer is here, and it's particularly good for this situation, when the customer says, I'm not really sure what I know, but what I want, but I know it when I see it. So you say, as the creating group of people, okay, let's start with this. And they deliver some kind of small piece of the work. They deliver you a high-level sketch of that piece of work, and they get your feedback. Hey, is this what you wanted? Yeah, that's what we wanted. So they deliver you another small increment of that work, and you can go, okay, is this still going where you wanted it? And you come back and say, no, this is not where I wanted it. Oh, that's okay. We've only got this much of it done. We can fix that. So they go back and they rework it. Okay, how about this? Oh, this is better direction that we're headed. I'm liking where we're going with this one now. Oh, okay, so now we can iterate on that and get better progress, right? So what you can see here is the iterative. We started out with a sketch on the face side here, right? And then we didn't have anything on this side, and we've added a little bit to it, and we've refined it. So you can see that we've added the color to it here. And then we add a little bit more and increment, right? So we iterate on each of the past sections, and we add to it as we go forward. I hope that makes sense what iterative and incremental together, combined together, look like. You can add little steps like that. I wish it was easy to understand, but it's, well, I think it's easy to understand. If it's not, ask me a question about it. What the heck do you mean by that, iterative and incremental? By taking this approach, you're able at any given time to to say, that's it, it's good enough, right? The thing with knowledge work is it's different than making watches. If I make a watch and I'm looking over at my desk, if I make a watch and I have leftover gears, that watch is not going to work, right? But making software is not like that. It's more like art. It's more like when I'm done when I think I'm done, when I feel like it's reached the point where it's done enough, right? If we thought at this point that was good enough, then that could go out. That could be the final product. Maybe it's not what we wanted, but then we would just keep going until we felt we were ready, and then you stop. So the Department of Licensing used an approach called Scrum, and if you're not familiar with Scrum, I will go through it really rapidly here for you. Scrum starts out with focusing on the customer, and the customer is represented by a product owner. And that product owner is someone who should know the customer's needs and understand the way your organization works and the way you provide service and delight your customers, right? So what are the things that you do to do that? That customer product owner creates a list, basically, of all the features and functions, kind of an outline idea of what it is that they want for this product. You know, what are all the things we're going to do to create this product or to enhance this product that we currently have, right? And that's called a product backlog. There's a lot of detail in how those are created, but for the sake of discussion here, it's a pile of cards with a couple of words each on them. They're a note to self. This is a great phrase. They're a promise of a future conversation. So remember that. They're not supposed to be a detailed requirement specification. They are just supposed to be a promise of a future conversation. So you take that product backlog, and the team looks at that backlog. The customer product owner has prioritized that list into the order that the customer value will be received. So the most important things to the customer are the first, the least important things are the last, and they're prioritized that way. So the team looks at that list and goes, hey, let's take some work off of that. We're going to pull some work off of there, and they decide we can get this much done in our little time window. We give ourselves 2 weeks. This particular team did. You can give yourself 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 1 week. It doesn't really matter to me. Depends on your organization. We'll talk about in a minute what that means. But this particular one used 2 week sprint. That's the time box that they gave themselves. Within that 2-week sprint, every day they met for a 15-minute or less little quickie stand-up meeting where they discussed what was going on for that day, and they coordinated with each other. It's not a status meeting. It's a team coordination meeting. It's very quick. Through the sprint, they created what it was that they had pulled in and taken on, those stories that they had taken on, and they created working software, fully working software for that little increment. And then they delivered it. They delivered to their customers, and they got feedback from their customers, and they were able to then do it all over again. So if that's a brief discussion of what Scrum is and how it works, but it's simple in theory, and you may have heard Agile approaches and thought gosh, that just seems so simple. I love this picture that I found of Dr. Martin Luther King, because you will never guess what the media is that created this simple-looking picture. Was not so simple to create. This guy created that amazing piece of art out of Rubik's Cubes. He had to get each Rubik's Cube to be the exact dimension, exact layout that he wanted it to be in order to show the piece of art. So This is like Agile, right? It's really simple on paper. You just throw some high-level information out there, and you develop a little bit of software, and you iterate and increment, deliver little increments, and deliver them iteratively, right? So hey, that should be easy, but it's not. It's more like this. It's trying to figure out which pieces are the most valuable, trying to figure out how it works. So it was not easy. So one of the things I'd like to talk about today is what is Agile? Because I talked about they used Agile, and using it very loosely to begin with here, because we haven't taken this moment to define it. I'm currently writing a book called Being Agile in a Waterfall World, and this is actually a diagram from the end of Chapter 1. I actually literally cut it and pasted it out of the chapter and put it into this webinar presentation for you. So you are the first people to ever see this diagram. When people use the word Agile, they mean generally one of 4 different things. And so I want you to be aware of this and become very specific in what you say and your questions, the way you respond. People sometimes mean 21st century management practice. So in the 20th century, early 20th century, the world revolved around the approaches developed for mass production, right? And the approach for command and control came out of that kind of environment. Okay, you could probably say it was around before that, but for the sake of discussion, a lot of it came from there. And things have changed quite a bit, right? We are not doing mass production. What you are doing right now with your organizations, whether they're government or not, is working in knowledge work. And knowledge work is completely different from doing manufacturing. That's not to say that manufacturing has remained stagnant. I want to make sure that that's very clear. But knowledge work is very different than manufacturing. So we need to understand that those practices. The funny thing is, a lot of manufacturing has moved beyond some of these 20th century practices, the old command control style stuff, but a lot of knowledge work contexts have not. And they're still struggling using management styles that were developed to control workers, but they're now trying to use that on knowledge work. And it's like oil and water. It just doesn't fit. So 21st century management practices, those are things that people mean when they say Agile sometimes. Sometimes they mean nimble. That's the way I like to use the word most often, and so you'll find me using them interchangeably. I've done that in this webinar. I've said nimble sometimes, right? Being nimble is the ability to move quickly, right? That's what the word originally means. Sometimes people mean the Agile movement. So the movement of becoming Agile in organizations, helping people adopt these practices, fighting for them. There's a lot that regular old traditional projects can learn from the Agile movement. Is it a surprise to anyone on this call? Raise your hand if it is a surprise to you that having the full dedicated attention of your project sponsor is going to make your project more successful. If that's a surprise to you, please raise your hand. Let me see. How many raised hands do I have? Oh, wait. None. Yeah. It is not a surprise. We all believe that. But one of the things that we can learn from the Agile movement is, you know what? They just would take nothing less. If you want to say you are doing Scrum, you have to say that we are going to get a dedicated product owner, project sponsor, same kind of similar role. Not exactly the same, but a similar role. Well, wow, that's not surprising that that's helpful, but the thing to learn is to stand your ground, right? And say, we have to have it, right? We have to have dedicated teams. If we don't have dedicated teams, this work is not going to get done effectively. And here are the reasons why. Boom, 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 right? So there's a lot to learn from the Agile movement. And then there are agility enabling practices, right? Working iteratively and incrementally is an agility enabling practice. I could use 21st century management practices, right? Empowering people, all kinds of lean approaches. I could learn things from the Agile movement and not be delivering iteratively and incrementally, and be dramatically better off than if I was not using these learnings from the Agile movement or 21st century management practice. I could use those two things and be great, doing much better on my project, my traditional projects, than I would have without them. So you can see that you could mean these different things and use them separately, but people conflate all four of these meanings into the word Agile. So be very careful when you hear people use the word Agile. Perk your ears up and listen to the context, because originally the word Agile was an adjective. Yes, it's an adjective. It is not a noun. I'm actually making some pins and T-shirts that say Agile is not a noun, because it's not, right? Agile means flexible. It means adaptive. It means nimble. It's an adjective. It describes a state of being. So when can you say that you are Agile? Well, Agile is the ability to adapt to changes as fast or faster than the changes occur. That is the way I use the term Agile. If you are Agile, you're able to change as fast or faster than the changes that are occurring. Let's take this for an example. If this is your change cycle, you see this diagram, and this is your organization's ability to build new products and services. So changes are happening at basically twice the speed of your ability to build products and services. In this case, you can very easily see you're not Agile. You are not able to keep up with the changes that are happening in your business context. Now, if you change your build cycle, right, if you develop iteratively and incrementally, that's one way of doing it, then you're able to deliver on cadence with your change cycle. And now nobody's change cycle is rhythmic like that, or at least not generally. Though in government, you can see some things like that with the legislative sessions, right, the beginning and ending of legislative sessions, and there are some specific change cycles that happen there. We got very used to those over the couple years with the Department of Licensing. Right? The end of the legislative session, there's like a month and a half or 2 months where everything goes on hold because there's this certain set of legislative projects that have to get done by the end of the legislative session, right? That's a cycle, and you can prepare for it, and you can be set up to be on cadence with it. So notice, though, in this definition, there's no time scale. So if your change cycle is a 6-month cycle, then you don't have to be iterating or incrementally delivering every 2 weeks. You might want to if you're doing software, because software is deliverable that way. But if you are doing something else, if you're building buildings or something, I don't know, something else, whatever your product is, if you're doing marketing, or if you are developing programs for retirement programs, right? If your change cycle is 6 months, then your build cycle should be 6 months, right? Or less, but not more. As soon as it's more, you are no longer Agile. All right, enough beating on that one. But that's an important thing to understand. Here's another thing to understand. Project requirements. In traditional approaches, we had this big, in software, we called it an SRS, a Software Requirements Specification. Big, fat document that had all this information in it that said what was in the project, right? And if you finished what was in this SRS, then your project was a success. And if you didn't finish everything that was in that project, that SRS, your project was a failure, right? Even if some of those things were of low value to your customer, or your customer didn't even care about at all, right? They had to be done. So one of the things that we do when we take an Agile approach, and we want to look at this from a lens of how can we be more nimble? How can we take an approach that allows us to, like those people did on the License Express project, be able to be happy at the end because we could have been delivering this for months. It could have gone live at any point, right? Well, if we take those requirements and we separate them out and we modularize them so that they're no longer this fuzzy, blurry blob, but there's crisp edges, and you have very defined interfaces that are loosely coupled, right? So the interface between each of these requirements is loosely coupled and well defined so that you can add or subtract pieces without affecting the other. This is just good design practice, right? Whether it's software design or car design. You want to have the interface between the engine and the frame of the car to be clearly defined and loosely coupled, not loosely attached, but meaning that there isn't deep coupling between the two systems, the car frame and the engine. You want it to be loosely coupled so that if I need to make changes to the engine, I don't have to change the body frame, right? You run into this problem if you do software projects all the time. We call it spaghetti code, right? Where if I make a change to this module, I don't know what's going to happen to that module over there because who knows how this stuff was developed. It's all mishmash. So if we clearly define, modularize, and prioritize these requirements, then we can see, hey, now we've got clean edges. Now let's prioritize them. Okay, so now we've taken all those requirements and we've put them onto this prioritized value map. So we're looking at this, okay, these things under release 1 are the most important to my customers. These things under release 2 are the next most important things to our customers. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way out to the end. Then you can look at it and go, oh, now the first thing I want to deliver is the most important thing to my customer. That makes perfect sense because then if I get to release, if I get to, about 4 or 5, I know I've delivered the 80% of what my customers want. Now, often what will happen is you'll get out here and go, you know what, this is delivering less than 5% of the overall value of this project to our constituents. Why are we even doing these last couple of features? Nobody cares, right? Let's put those on hold, or let's change them, or let's do something different. This allows you to be adaptable, right? To be nimble and be able to change these things. So let's look at how iterative delivery worked with the Department of Licensing. So remember that picture at the beginning? Well, here's what this wasn't a real thing, but they created wireframes, and this is what a wireframe looks like, of what it should look like in kind of ballpark. This is what we want it to look like. And then they created one piece. So all they did in their first 2-week time period was created, okay, can we get to display on a web page Joseph's driver's license, his expiration date, and the status? Maybe it didn't even have all that. Maybe it was just my name and the driver's license number. Boom, that's it. But that's like the most important thing to the customer, to know that it's them, right? Did I get the right record? Yes. Okay, that's the first thing to start with. And then we'll expand from that. So then they added things, okay, can we display his information and the information from the vehicle systems? Okay, that's A, high value piece. B, pretty complex to be able to pull from the other system and get it all to display together. So they pulled it in there, right? And they were able to show the vehicles and my name. You can't do anything, but at least you can see it, right? There it is. I can see my records. I can know then what the Department of Licensing has on record for me. you could go live with this right as it stands right here. They could have just launched it. Boom, here it is. Hey, people, now you can go check out and see what the Department of Licensing believes your records are. That's value, right? Because then me as the customer, I could go, oh, they think I have a Hyundai Sonata? I don't have a Hyundai Sonata. I bought a new Toyota or another a Honda, right? I need to go correct that. And then I could trundle down to the office and get that fixed because I couldn't fix it online. But I could at least see it. Value, high value. And then they looked at it and went, okay, so what's the first thing that we want to, first feature that we want to add for them to be able to do to these records? Well, maybe we want to make it so they don't show one of these in their list. And I don't know what order they did these in. I'm not trying to show you that. I'm trying to show you the idea. So in another 2 weeks, they would do this. Another 2 weeks, they would go, okay, high value. I want to be able to change the address associated with a vehicle. Perfect. Great. There it is. So now we can add that feature. That's huge, right? You have to be able to do the CRUD operations, you know, create, delete, blah, 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 fix by doing that right there. And then I can, what if I do change address on the driver's licenses? That's a different system, so you'll notice it wasn't here. Happens here. And slowly they added more features and more features. So they could have gone live at any one of these places. They could have gone live right here. Look, they can change their addresses and request a driving record. Woohoo! That's good. Right there. That's good enough. But I could do this. I could replace my license or ID. Ah, what if I do the report a sale? Great. Hey, let's get update emails. Anytime my driver's license is about to expire, I'll get an update email for it. Cool. Let's add that feature. Hey, what about this to-do list? We'll have things pop up there when your driver's license is coming due. You know, so if you go onto the website, the first thing you'll see in this kind of orange box is, hey, these are your to-do items. It's a really neat feature. People like it, but is it as important as being able to, A, see that it's the right record, B, see what cars that Department of Licensing has under me, or D, being able to change my address? No, those are the top 4 things, right? So those things went first. To-do list came later. So there was a great question here, working with the Department of Licensing. What did your coaching look like, and can you explain your support in their transition to being more self-sufficient? Yeah, you bet. Coaching looked like, so they had a couple of folks there who I don't know if they specifically designated them as their internal coaches, but they've been groomed over the past several years to be their internal coaches. And I can put you in contact with them if you want. They're great people. So I worked with them quite a bit because my goal working with any organization is that you don't need me. I want it to be so that you can become completely self-sufficient without having to have me or anyone like me coming to you anymore. Now, it's going to take a while depending on how you do it. The way that they worked, it was, hey, Joseph, we'll have you down here for certain periods of time and over the course of the year, and we'll build and refine our process as we go through that. And our internal coaches will, I worked with them quite a bit to help them. Because if you look at this 4 aspects of agility, and this has been developed within actually the past year, so this wasn't specific that I used this, but this is what we did. The technical practices of doing Scrum and the business processes, things like using story points and doing requirements the way we did them, changing the way that they gathered requirements and captured those, that's business processes. Those are the top 2 things up there on this diamond shape. They're easy. They're very easy to do, considering all the things that you have there. I can teach you how to do those things pretty quickly. The bottom 2, they're things that you can teach, but they really are more caught than taught. And it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of commitment from the organization to say, yeah, we are going to change our culture. Because becoming an Agile organization, if you're going to do a complete transformation of the organization, it takes leadership. And this has got to be what we call bottom-up, top-enabled, right? So a lot of times an Agile transformation is bottom-up, right? It starts with some small group of people down toward the bottom of the organization who want to try Scrum, and they start trying it. But without the top-enabled part of it, it hits a glass ceiling. And you will receive value. Don't get me wrong there. I have worked with organizations where it has been, that's all. That's all it will be. That's all it ever will be. And, well, that's actually what the name of my company means, Whitewater Projects. I'm dealing with agility in contexts that it is not necessarily easy to do, right? It's like whitewater rafting. Kind of messy, kind of dangerous, but really fun. And you're best if you try it your first time with a guide. So those technical practices and business processes, you can learn those quickly. The leadership and culture change takes time. So I worked with these coaches within the Department of Licensing to help them understand more and more. They got outside training as well, went to other classes. I totally encourage that, going to other workshops and things so that they get perspectives, right? Different people's perspectives. The organizational culture has to change because we're not just talking about, so a misconception often is that Agile is a different way of delivering. Agile isn't just a different way of delivering. Agile is a different way of conceiving of work, right? It's that whole iterative and incremental thing and prioritizing based on value, that's huge, right? To try and get your organization to be able to say, yes, we are going to value delivery of high-value things first and low-value things last, and if we don't get to some things, that's okay. That's huge. Just that by itself is culture change, right? It takes leadership understanding and being willing to change the way they think about their delivery and stop thinking in fixed projectized. Because of budgeting systems within government agencies, you still have to work within projectized contexts, but you can have a flexible definition of the project scope. And that's what you need to do, right? You need to understand that. Okay, so that's that. I think that sort of answered the question. How do we work to transition them to be more self-sufficient? It has been a gradual release process. So I use something called the gradual release of responsibility process with my clients. I like to, you've probably heard it, first I show you how to do it, then we do it together, then you do it, and then you're released to do it by yourself. So the first time we did sprint planning, the very first time, I facilitated it, right? We were going through it. I think I facilitated it. It was a long time ago. With clients I'm working with right now, the first time we do it, I facilitate it. I show you what's going on. I walk you through the process. I'm actually training at the same time, right? So usually the first sprint planning session and demo sessions, they take twice as long as they normally will because I'm training you at the same time we're going through it. It's a great way of learning because it's very practical in the moment. And then the second time, we'll do it together. We'll co-facilitate it. And the third time, I like to see 2 or more people from your team working together on, right, so we're doing a sprint planning. I'll have 2 Scrum Masters or 2 people who are leaders facilitating it together so they can play off each other, right? So you're not just going to be jumping out by yourself. And then by the 4th time, you'll do it by yourself. I'll be there watching. I'll provide coaching afterwards, not during, right? So that's called the gradual release of responsibility module. It's not a linear thing, right? You might think of it as those are very linear. It's kind of loopy, right? So we'll go back and try it again and take multiple stabs at it. All right. So some good places to get started with this: culture. right? If you can help teams to start be self-directed, I know we are right at the top of the hour, and this is my last slide, I think. If you can help the teams be self-directed, that is awesome. Daniel Pink, in his book called Drive, talks about the 3 things that motivate people: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. If you can help people be given more autonomy in the way they work, how they work. Remember how on that Scrum picture, the people pulled the work in. They took on as much work as they thought they could do. That's self-direction, right? You're not being assigned work any longer. You're pulling it in. From a leadership perspective, leaders are product owner. In this case, it was a product owner group instead of a single product owner because we couldn't get it committed to being just one product owner. Eventually, actually, they did get just one product owner, and she was with them. She would come over to the offices and stay with them there for a good percentage of the project. But oftentimes, there'll be a product owner group that we work with there. We need to encourage leadership to understand that they don't need to be making all the decisions anymore. It's releasing people to be able to be making more decisions. So there's a lot of context there. Within the business systems, it's hard to get dedicated teams without running a pilot first. So definitely would say try and pilot this. You can get dedicated people for a pilot often. But recognize that if that's what you're doing, then that's part of the context of the success. So when this is successful, not if, but when you're successful piloting Scrum or Kanban or whatever you pilot, when you're successful with it, recognize the limitations that you've put around your success. If you piloted it with dedicated teams and you don't have that typically within your organization, and you try now to roll it out still without dedicated teams, well, it's not going to be as successful. Just recognize that. And that might be a good argument for then going to having dedicated teams. We could do a whole webinar just on why you want to have dedicated teams and reduce your work in process. So that's business systems. Technical practices, if you do nothing else, and I pound on this over and over again, if you do nothing else from a technical perspective, a technical practice perspective, start doing retrospectives. The retrospective is at the end of every sprint, they would take an hour or an hour and a half and just talk through what did we do in this sprint? How did we work? Did we deliver everything? Why didn't we deliver things? And they would make a plan then for fixing those problems. The big difference between a retrospective and a lessons learned is they actually are within the context, so they make real plans to learn the lesson by implementing something different to fix the problem. So that's it. I think you've been asking questions as we go through. I can hang out for another 15 minutes or so. If you have more questions, I'm happy to be here for you. I'm going to change this slide to here. This is the list of suggested resources for you. So if you want to scribble those down, I am recording this webinar, so you can go back and see the webinar. If you would like the PowerPoint, I will have it posted. Actually, it is posted already on slideshare.com, as well as you can get to it from my website, whitewaterprojects.com. If you found this interesting or useful, drop me a note. I would love to hear and hear how things are going. If you'd like to hear another webinar or see what's going on with other people, let me know. Happy to do more webinars like this. I used to do a monthly webinar. I've gotten away from doing that for this past 7 months or so. Might get back to doing that. We'll see. But thank you for coming today, and I will talk to you later. Any questions, just drop me a note.